Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Cassidy Diamond. I am the Associate Director of Public Programs and Events here at the International Documentary Association. Before we get started, I would like to offer a brief land acknowledgement, as we often do. I'm coming to you today from Chicago, which is on the unceded land of the Potawatomi people, who have been stewards of this land for generations. I would like to also thank IndieWire for their support in bringing the screening series to you all. And always, you can go to documentary.org and see all of our upcoming screenings. We've got another month or so left. I can't believe it, but a lot of great films coming up. And without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to KPCC's Amy Nicholson for the conversation with All Light Everywhere's director, Theo Anthony.
Well, Theo, welcome and hello. It is a pleasure to get to interview you. I have to say, I have become fascinated with the mechanics of your brain. So I want to start off our conversation just by really keeping the camera on you. I want to know the origin story of a director whose end credits of his film include a bibliography. What is your story?
How far back? Well, yeah, first off, it's really great to talk to you, and thanks for part of this. I think my origin, I think I always really wanted to be a writer, and so much of my influences were just from reading a lot and fiction, and I wanted to do like short stories, and that's just sort of always what I thought I'd pursue. But I also was a big like science kid. I loved like physics and chemistry. And didn't really ever have a way to bring these things together. In high school, I found Borges, and that was like seemed like the closest thing that you married these two. And I guess in high school, I was like making skate videos with my friends, and just like that's how I learned to edit. It was just sort of watching my friend who had a camera just do it. And I guess when I went to college, I made music videos, and I shortly after started making documentaries. And I think in nonfiction, I found this way to pursue a lot of the ideas that I was interested in. Like documentary can be it's such a flexible, it's such a flexible approach. You could really take the shape of whatever you're interested in. And so through documentary, I found this way to explore all these ideas with history, with science, with politics that I've been interested in for a really long time. So documentary is just kind of like what I've found that lets me explore what I'm interested in. So, yeah.
I mean, is it true that you also spent some time as a journalist? I'm curious, like what kind of journalism you were doing?
Yeah, so after I graduated school, I got some work with Vice at the time, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about my time. I got a lot of experience there, and also have a lot of critiques of the institution. And I was basically just really I was really naive and really eager, and I pitched them a project where I got sent over to the Eastern Congo, and I was like totally unprepared for a project like that. I had never done any work like that, and really just went deep in. And that period of my life, from I was like 23 and living in the Eastern Congo, working as like a war correspondent, freelancing for other news organizations in the area, and just really like learning on my feet, which I am also, I should not have been over there in the first place, and especially like someone with my lack of experience. But I also was very grateful to see real professional veteran journalists doing that work, and learned so much just from like attaching myself to them and really watching how they did it, and also just like really experiencing for the first time like how much of an outsider I was, and how great that distance between the storyteller and the people whose stories are told in media can be. And so I, just so many of my Congolese friends also are just, I'm so grateful to for just like taking me in as a friend and just really showing me like the beauty of that city where I was.
I mean, is it fair to say that you're a guy who, when something makes you curious, you just go all in?
Yeah, obsessive. Yeah, I get I like, I'll find something and I'll just really a phrase or an idea, and I just like will start this Googling wormhole, and I'll just pull and pull and pull, and like it may turn into a film, it might turn into like a story that I just like tell other friends and we just sort of build on it. Yeah, I sort of am drawn to certain things, certain questions. I think my favorite thing is like when really, really banal details belie like really deep philosophical questions. This is so off, but this is just like how I think. So I was in London and there was a commercial for anti-dandruff shampoo, and they said that they claimed that the shampoo got rid of your dandruff, and then on the the legal text, they have like the little like medical text at the bottom, they said from a distance of 3 feet. So actually the dandruff shampoo wasn't claiming that it got rid of the shampoo. They were claiming that there was a sort of finite dandruff resolution that they were just ignoring. So like the idea, and I looked it up, and there had been a lawsuit with a bunch of angry people with dandruff who had accused this dandruff shampoo of not getting rid of their dandruff. And so there was a legal, like very serious judges had to sit in a room and hear a case about what the proper resolution for dandruff visibility is. That stuff is like, so I just love when you find stuff like that. It's amazing. So.
Wow. I mean, I can't wait to see if that ever hooks itself into one of your documentary structures.
Yeah, it already has.
It also says dandruff people just don't let anybody get close to you, which is really sad. But
yeah, or we just learn to accept dandruff as a part of life,
Well, so then what here in this film and All Light Everywhere is kind of the layer that you kind of put your hooks into first. I mean, you've got a layer where you're talking to Axon Enterprise, who makes tasers and body cameras, which, by the way, I assume I'm not the only person who's surprised to realize that tasers and body cameras are manufactured by the same company. You're talking about like the origin of recorded ideas, going back to like our very first understandings of planetary movement. I mean, you're talking about humans and our belief and the trust that we put in recorded images. I mean, where did you begin? Like what came first for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to just keep on talking about dandruff for this whole Q&A, by the way. No, I think just
you talk about it a lot for a guy who doesn't have hair as long as me.
Yeah, I know. Well, just less hair, less problems for me. So I think just like with that, I just have these like very particular entry points, and it's like I don't go in with these grand ideas of structure or like a point that I'm trying to make. And I think like what's crucial to my filmmaking structure, but also I think the way that I hope audiences experience the film is that they're kind of like learning these things with me. I don't come in as an expert on body cameras or even as an expert on early photographic history. I just really feel like I'm pulling this thread that I'm not making, that already exists in the world, that already exists in scholarship, that exists in other films. And I'm just kind of like just following and documenting my process of that journey. So with body cameras, it's like I've always been drawn to these questions of like image and power and how the two, uphold each other, how, narratives of power get pulled through images and how images uphold those narratives of power. So I think that I really am always drawn to these questions. And when I see something that sticks, like body cameras, I just sort of know enough to kind of trust my instincts to sort of start pulling that thread. So really like the entry point was, if we're as little as possible, was just living in Baltimore after during the uprising, after the killing of Freddie Gray. Body cameras were this thing that were being proposed by both sides, by both police unions and by advocates for police reform. And Obama's Department of Justice at the time, this was one of their major recommendations. And I thought, well, this is actually very strange, that this weird bridge between sides. So I started looking into it, and it kind of led me on the journey of the film that you just saw today. So
I mean, except you do a really interesting thing, which is, I think, you don't show any of the images that I think audiences might expect in a film about body cameras and policing, specifically like shaky footage, somebody being chased, images of violence. Tell me about that choice.
Yeah, no, I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because it was like a very deliberate choice to not show those images. I think very early on, we decided that we were making a film about perpetrators and not victims. And that's not to say that there aren't victims in the real world, in life, and that these technologies of surveillance don't have real, literal victims, particularly people of color in the US. We didn't want to make a film that approached people from the perspective of framing them as victims, because there's so many other stories that can be told about people. And we felt as if in our position, and, especially our position of privilege, that we actually had the opportunity to turn the camera on these perpetrators to get access to these environments. So I think that when people hear it's a film that's about body cameras, there's an understandable apprehension about seeing it, that, so many of the images that we come to mind are, as you said, shaky footage, but also particularly images of explicit violence against bodies, particularly like Black bodies in this country. And that I think that it's important to understand that happens. But as a filmmaker, I've come to really question the necessity of re-traumatizing audiences for the sake of proving that a traumatic event occurred. I think that obviously there's these traumatic events that occurred, but in that moment of re-traumatizing, I think that we have such a visceral emotional reaction that seeing it on screen, we aren't actually able to see the frame. We aren't able to see the context. We aren't able to see how these images of trauma are being used and being sold and being distributed and being used for those same very institutions that are inflicting so much of that trauma. So for us, we were really keen on sort of almost like holding up our hands to the brightest light in the room and sort of seeing all the other shades of nuance that come into view. And so that allowed us to really look at how these images are circulated, how they're produced, and how they're what they aren't showing.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Like, now that hearing you explain, I'm kind of picturing that you're a filmmaker who wants to activate not the audience's nervous system, but their frontal lobe, to turn on that part of their body instead of like the immediate, like, I have just seen something powerful one. And that also does allow you to put your camera on somebody like the spokesman of Axon, like the people who work at persistent surveillance systems. I mean, what did you tell them about the film you were making to get them to not only say yes, but to be like, let me show you our cool things and look kind of ridiculous displaying our wares?
Yeah, I think we were like pretty straightforward about the film we were making. I think that I say, I'm making a film about technology and the way it influences the way we see it. I mean, that's like the most low-res version of how, you could describe this film. But we say we're making this film about technology and ways of seeing and how they're linked. And we're really interested in body cameras for that reason. Like I'm being honest. I don't have to remember any lie that I've told. There's no lie there. I think what we do though, and it's important to understand, like important to keep in mind with like any of the people we filmed with, both the spy plane, the Baltimore police, or Axon body cameras, is all of these technologies are sold to the public with the sales pitch of transparency. And beneath that, there's this logic that if you are able to see something via transparency, you will understand it. And if you understand it, you will be able to change it. I think that all three of those things are really important on their own: seeing, understanding, and changing / action. But I don't think that they're related in the way that we want them to. And I think that, but maybe that's a different thing. I think that the important thing when we're approaching these companies, though, is that I think transparency in principle is a good thing. They think transparency is a good thing. So when we approach them, we say, we think transparency is a great thing. We'd love for you to be transparent about how transparent you're being. That's a really circular way of saying it. But that places them in the position. And again, we're being honest. I'm curious about how transparency works. It's not just a natural filter that you throw on the world and all of a sudden everything is understandable and visible. Yeah. And so we place them in a position of saying, like, look, you either fulfill your mandate of being transparent and letting us in, or there's this sort of naked hypocrisy to the very thing that you're proposing. So we pitch them on the transparency, and we also, particularly with Axon and the Baltimore Police Department, every single thing that they did in the film, they've also done with other journalists. So it's combined with a lot of research where you can go, and we got into the Baltimore Police Department classroom because I knew that they had let other journalists in to view something, to do the same exact thing. And so when I'm approaching them, I say, we're not doing sit-down interviews, we're not asking questions. We want the same access the Baltimore Sun got, just to sit on a seminar because we think body cameras are interesting. And for Axon, we say, we'd love to do the thing that Vice did or Axios did, where you just walked around the office telling us about the architectural details. And so them feeling like it's a familiar routine also sort of lowers the barrier to entry. So, yeah.
Have you spoken to them since the film came out? Have they seen?
We haven't. I assume that they've seen it. That's like they're a multi-billion-dollar corporation at this point with like a deep PR, human resources department, and I think that they have Google Alerts set up. Every time we get to do something like this, but I don't think it's in their interest to really respond. We're a small independent film trying to raise these big questions, and they're doing like multi-million-dollar contracts with cities every day. So little Streisand effect there where, it's just not in their interest to really point attention to us in any way.
That makes sense. I mean, but I want to learn a little bit more about, taking these threads and then pulling them together into a work like this. I mean, like when you say discover something like the fact that there's this connection between like cameras and Gatling guns, and that Gatling guns themselves are this example of how people believe when there's a new technology, in this case, the ability to shoot more bullets per minute, that new technology saves lives, the thing that we like keep coming back to today, as though we keep thinking that it's true. I mean, when you discover a fact like that, when you're going into your Google wormholes, do you get a little zing right away where you're like, oh, this is definitely going in the movie? Or do you just have like pages of ideas that you categorize and wonder what to pull from?
Yeah, I think I'm like always kind of like just gathering things. I have like a bunch of bookmarks. I have a lot of notebooks, and I'm just always just gathering ideas. And similar to I don't have a defined structure for I don't know what my message is going to be. I don't think there necessarily is a single message. I don't know what my themes are. I don't start from the top down. It's very kind of just tunneling. And I'd say the organizing principle is those moments of connection. And so, for instance, the pigeon scene, I was researching pigeons and I thought oh, this is a cool history. I don't know if it's going to be in there. And I saw that one image of the pigeon's wings entering the side of the frame. And in that moment, and it reminded me right away of that moment with the spy plane where the plane's body actually comes in and into the frame of the image. And so in that moment, I knew that was going to be a section in the film. Not necessarily because that's the most the official history or anything like that, or that it's the most useful information, but I'm that's a really compelling connection. So I always look for these kind of moments of synchronicity.
I mean, does that mean that you're holding the majority of the film in your head the whole time, or are you finding a lot of it during the edit and going out and getting other pieces?
Yeah, I think I'm an editor first and foremost, like more than I'm like a director or anything. And obviously that like informs the way I direct. But yeah, so much of it is, it's like the difference between like a like a like a schematic that you draw, like an architect would draw up for like, here's how the building works. Like, here's how the building looks on the outside versus like making a construction document that's like literally like, here's where the nail goes, how we have the HVAC come in. It's like entirely different. Like that's actually what the design is. And that's actually what the building is. So I feel like editing is all those details. And like, that's where you actually find out what the film is. Cause it's like, oh, it's great. Like you can come up with whatever you want like beforehand, but it's not until you actually start to like figure out the lifeblood of the film and figure out how the electric is going to connect between two rooms, like that actually ends up influencing the structure of the film. So you can do all like the sort of fancy big picture stuff beforehand, but it's not until you really get to the edit that you figure out what it is.
Well, and in your edit, you have like, I mean, one last surprise for us, which is you end the film showing what you left out of the film. Footage of high schoolers, Black and brown high schoolers, taking control of their own cameras to make their own films. I want to know like why you decided to leave that out, but also then why you decided to kind of slide it back in as a confession to the film that you were leaving it out.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was like, we spent 2 years trying to answer that question. And, I think it's a scene that is, a lot of people have a lot of different feelings about, and it was what we felt was the best way to answer, our own questions about our own film. So I think that going back even to that last thing, I made this, big picture. You're drawing out what the building looks like. You're like, oh, it'd be so cool if we had this room next to this room and this scene at this scene and this scene. And I knew that I wanted to make this film about this one very particular thread of history of linking violence and image making. Obviously, that's not the only history. And I always wanted to find space in the film for narratives that counteracted, that pushed back against that. And we spent 6 months with these kids, just doing something really beautiful and like just sitting and working with them. It was so much beyond just like sitting in their classroom filming them. They were taking the camera from their own shoulders, filming their own behind the scenes. They were using my camera to film their music videos, their short films. And, that was an incredible experience. And I think like we all like had a really great time. And we got to the end of the film and I saw that this frame that the film was exploring was this one very particular perspective of image making. And I didn't feel right placing those kids within that frame, even if the purpose of that was to push back against the frame. I don't think those kids were under any obligation to defy my frame. And because in that classroom, that's not what they were doing. They were making their own images. They were telling their own stories. And that was a great experience, regardless of whether or not it was included in a film. And that was always our principles. We wanted to make sure that even apart from the film, we were having a good time. And I think we did. And yeah, at the end of the day, it's just like we had that as a departure, it's like it's an epilogue because it sort of shows, it shows what could have been or what was, and what was and what could be. And we wanted to have a trace of that because our conversations that we had around whether or not to include that student section and how much influenced the whole film. It shaped the entire film. And to take them out of it was a form of erasure that we also didn't feel good with. So this felt like a compromise. Like, I forget who said like, a good compromise is where everyone's a little bit unhappy. So it's like, I think like for me, maybe like all the different parts of me were a little unhappy, but in my heart, I just knew that it was what we had to do. So that's what we did. And we wanted to be as honest as possible about that.
I mean, when I hear you talk, I feel like I hear the voice of an activist. So I'm curious, like, you're talking about like the 3 bullet points of what people are looking for in transparency. I mean, are you thinking, or have you been able to take any of your ideas and get them applied in the real world about policing and body cameras?
Yeah, so no, definitely. I really think that in addition, to so much of what we've talked about, I think the uprising of last year, following the murder of George Floyd, like really forced us to reconsider how concrete and material this film needed to be. It really brought it back down to earth, and our sort of responsibility to like really not have body cameras be this abstract sci-fi piece of tech, but actually be this very real thing that has a very real effect in the world. So it brought it back down to earth, but it also got me really thinking about the other areas of action outside of filmmaking that I could be taking this knowledge and this experience to. I saw a renewed call for body cameras that were, in my mind, really potentially dangerous. And so I live in upstate New York, in Hudson, and I got involved with a police reform panel that was put together by our mayor here, and I was able to take this, and we were able to actually rewrite the police department's body camera and use of force policy, and that has kind of like, it was actually an interesting transition, because I was able to sort of take all these things that I'm against in documentary, which is like very concrete, distilled messages, and actually take it to a political arena and say, no, like this is what you actually need to know. These are the facts. Like, this is why this doesn't make sense. This is why it hurts people. And we were able to really successfully like rewrite their policy. It's not the only thing that needs to get done, but I've also kind of like, I don't know, I'm also running for city council now and taking a lot of these same things. And yeah, so I'm like, I'm Hudson's next 4th Ward alderman. So it's not.
Wait, did the election already happen?
I'm running unopposed. So I'm.
Oh my gosh! Preemptive congratulations.
Yeah, unless I really mess it up in the next few weeks, I'm set to take office on January 1st, and yeah, I don't know. It's just like I didn't really think that I'd want to get into politics, but I think I'm really interested in understanding how things work, and I'm excited at all the stuff that I'll for sure be learning along the way. So it's just also a nice way to kind of like relieve some of that anxiety, because I think we place so much weight on things right now. Are there's a lot at stake, I think, putting it lightly. Like, things feel really dark at times, and understandably we put so much pressure on our works of art to perform or to address these, but also to sometimes solve those. And I think while I understand and empathize with that impulse, I also feel that if we are restricting our political discourse to cultural objects, then actually a lot of the political work isn't getting done. So I think that actually freeing that up and realizing there's other streams of action that we can take politically actually can allow art to be a little more playful and to explore ambiguities and nuance in ways that sometimes feel restrictive right now, because there is such an impetus to change things. So yeah, it's what I'm doing and what I'm passionate about. So we'll see what happens. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
Talk to me in a year.
I love that you're entering the political fray on your own terms. I mean, because I'm sure some people watching this remember that like 2 years ago, your previous film, Rat Film, became like this right-wing talking point for Donald Trump Jr. because he seemed to believe, having clearly never seen it, that it backed up his father's kind of insults, I would say, of the Democratic leadership of Baltimore. I mean, do you feel fairly confident that he didn't see it? And like, how was that very weird whirlwind of Twitter storms for you?
Yeah, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. It was really wild. I think for people who aren't familiar, there's essentially a right-wing conservative politician in Baltimore who stirred up some things around the Democratic leadership's inability to address working class Baltimore, and as seen through the rat infestation. she was coming at it from a very right-wing angle. There's a lot to critique about Democratic leadership in Baltimore, but it entered the culture war and just became this whole thing. And basically someone threw my film into the mix, and these bots, like I just watched it. It was all these, you could see all these accounts that were just very clearly automated actors just started retweeting the film over and over and over again. And it became like this trending topic and got retweeted by Fox News anchors and all the way up to like Donald Trump Jr. And it was like truly surreal. So I was like fielding calls from Tucker Carlson to come on his show. And I just was like, I stepped away. I didn't respond to anything, but it just was like a real lesson in how narrative gets perpetuated, because no one saw the film. It was all like, just a really small example of that. The link that got passed around was the PBS link, because we aired on PBS earlier that year. Very clearly said February 26, 2018 on it. And everyone seeing it and just only reading the headline was under the assumption that Rat Film was airing on PBS that night. And so inevitably when they tuned in to watch it, it wasn't on. So rather than saying, oh wait, we got the date wrong, the response to that was, oh wait, there's a left-wing conspiracy. Like PBS bowed to left-wing pressure to take Rat Film off the air. And so we're gonna go watch the film anyways. So my favorite thread out of this whole thing was like very confused right-wingers watching my film and live tweeting and just being like, there's a rat and now there's fireworks and now drugs are bad. And then just logging off. So that was like maybe the only enjoyable part of that whole thing. But it was a very wild time.
Well, I do have to let you go, but I want to ask before I do, can I take a guess that your restless creative brain is thinking about another project right now?
Yeah, you're looking at it. I'm getting into woodworking, and I've really found a lot of satisfaction in that. So that's kind of all I'm thinking about these days is woodworking, and how much I have to learn about the city charter before I take office. So that's kind of like I don't know. I'm like, it just took a long time to make All Light Everywhere. It's like 5 years. I'm tired, and I'm really excited to read for pleasure again, and to be reading other stuff, to start reading fiction. And I'm always gathering things, and it'll lead to something. I don't know what it is yet. So I'm just trying to figure out what that is.
Well, I can't wait to find out. Thank you, Theo, so much for joining us. Thank you all for watching us. Thank you, Gabe, for the translations. And have a lovely day, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.